So I'm Ellen Mitchell, your heels on the ground. I'm here today with Dominique Braggs. She's an estate and elder law attorney in Virginia. And we were introduced by my colleague Jeff Wu, where she spoke on a call that we have regarding digital assets and estate planning, which is something I had never heard of or thought of. And I live in a world of estate planning and the sandwich generation, which is you're taking care of your children and you have elderly parents and you're stuck right there. One of the things that you said on that call that had never occurred to me was passwords. I always think of the physical things that need to be taken care of and preserved, but I could imagine that it would be very easy to be locked out of all of the accounts if you didn't have information. So can you just kind of introduce yourself and then just talk a little bit about digital assets and what people should know?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate having the opportunity to have this conversation today. My name is Dominique Braggs. I am an estate planning attorney for the last 20 years. I'm licensed in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, although I am able to help assist clients nationwide because I do have a nationwide network of attorneys that I work with. So that being said, when we're talking about digital assets, a lot of times with estate planning, people are used to hearing about wills and trust and power of attorney, but they're not thinking about all of their assets. They're used to the physical assets and what do we do with these physical assets, but they're also the digital assets. And we started thinking about this as people start asking about cryptocurrency and we're saying, oh, what do we need to do with this? But really it's any of your digital assets. And Ellen had actually brought up the about passwords, but very important if you've ever gotten locked out of your email
Only
or
all the time, Dominique. Only all the time.
right, anything like that, you know how difficult it is to unlock that, or you need to update your password. You need to try to keep track of, no, that was my password from 4 iterations ago. I can't use something similar. But all of your assets, all of your digital assets, you need to think about as far as planning, who would have access to it if something happened to me. This is your social medias, your emails, everything like that. Or what do I not want to have people have access to if something happens to me? We joke about, and I feel that I can say this because I think we're about, of the same age. The joke is if you find a VHS tape that doesn't have a label on it, don't watch it. just don't. And so there could be things in your digital assets where you're like, hey, if I'm not here, just go ahead and delete all of those emails, please. But it's thinking about who would have access, how they would be able to access it, whether or not your assets, for instance, a lot of people have Kindle books, but they might not realize, unlike going and buying a physical copy of the book that they own, it's a physical copy. No, you have a license to the electronic copy of the book. And when you pass away, if you haven't made arrangements to have those assets, passed on or something, if no one has access to your account, all of those books in your Kindle library are gone. No one has access to that. Versus have you set it up so that it can be passed along to someone, you jointly own the account with someone else. And so therefore, since it's a jointly owned asset, they're able to continue using it. It's things like this that we really want to think about because what you don't want to have happen is something happens to you, your family's already grieving, but there's also the idea of, oh my gosh, now what do we do? We see this quite a bit when we first open estates and the families say, well, are we able to continue making payments out of this account? Or does everything stop while we are trying to open probate? And here's the thing, a lot of times people have electronic payments set up. And I'll say sometimes, hey, look, right now, if it's not broken, don't break it. And while we're getting everything set up. But there are times when if your loved one was the only one who actually had online access to the account, then everything stops. Payments stop being made, and it could be, hey, this was our mortgage payment that was being taken out. And so now we need to hurry over to the courthouse to try to get someone qualified as the executor of the estate so that we can continue paying the mortgage. So these are the sort of things that we're looking at. And one of the other things that has come up, I mean, we were talking about passwords, but also in regards to a human person, we're used to having executors of estate. And I bring this up specifically as someone in the sandwich generation. My mother might not really understand everything with digital assets, but one of my children who they're in their 20s, they do. And so maybe I am my mother's executor for her estate, but one of my daughters is her digital executor because they are much more familiar with digital assets and they're able to navigate that piece of it. It's not a formal role, such as someone who would need to go to the courthouse to qualify to be a digital executor. But within our documents, we can designate someone for that. So if it's within your will, within your trust, within your power of attorney documents to say, yeah, if I'm incapacitated, this is the person that can assist me specifically with my digital assets.
I love that. I actually, right before we got on our call today, got a call from my father, and he is going to New York on business tomorrow.
Mhm.
So he asked me if he could order a vehicle, ride to the airport by Uber. And I said, well, do you have the app? He's like, no. I said, do you know how to download an app? He
Yeah,
said, no. And I said, okay, we can order the Uber for you. Let's kind of back up in terms of what time you need it to be there. And he's like, okay, well, then just send me all the documentation needed. And I'm like, no, there's so even just like such a simple thing. And there are things that I would think are very simple, or there are things my son would think are very simple, where
yeah,
I would be in the same situation as my dad is like, what? I don't understand. So, what's simple to one generation is going to be more complex to the generation above them. So,
absolutely.
I think someone on our call had mentioned an actual password manager. Do you
Yes.
recall?
There it was LastPass. I believe it was
And if that's what was it
LastPass.
called last was I think something was called crypt, something with a crypt keeper or something.
Yes, yes.
I'll look.
But the thing about, and I'm glad that you circled back to the passwords because I have a friend who is a cybersecurity attorney, and she says, look, I've gone back to having a notebook next to my computer where I'm writing down my passwords because otherwise I will forget. Like most people, I carry around my phone everywhere. I have in the Notes app my list of passwords because, again, I can't remember. And then there are specific apps for passwords that will create strong passwords for you and will keep track of it so that you don't have to. I say now in my 50s, I'm like, my brain is like a sieve. So I'm amazed at what I retained and also amazed at what just seems to go in one ear and go out the other. So I highly recommend using one of the apps or having some sort of note-taking function so that you can keep track of it because I'm sure that we've all experienced the, oh my gosh, I'm trying to get into this application or I'm trying to use this service and they say, what's your password? Nope. Oh, it's been 90 days. You need to update your password. Oh, it can't be anything like your last password. And next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, I have 50 different passwords to keep up with, and there's no way that I can do it.
Well, and now with the two authorization,
Yes.
sometimes I'm texting my husband, what's the code because it's going to him or vice versa. It's a lot to
Yeah.
keep track of.
And the thing is, this is going to keep getting more complex. It's not going to get easier as far as we might be able to come up with workarounds to make it easier. But when I say it's going to keep getting more complex, to your point, now we have the two-factor authentication. And instead of it just comes to your phone and you say, oh, okay, here we go, let's do this. No, now it's like, what phone number did we put in? Oh, it's going to my spouse's phone. All right, let me text my spouse to, and funny enough, what you were saying with Uber, I've had an Uber family account for years. My daughter just flew back into New York a couple of days ago, and she sends me a text. She was like, can you call my Uber driver because he says he's here, but he's not. And it was because it's my phone number that was on the account. So even though they're able to go in and order the Ubers, if there are any sort of notifications, it was coming to me. And I'm here in Virginia. She's up in New York saying, I can't actually communicate with him. So can you give him a call? Because
Yeah, yeah, good examples. What other, whether it's technology or any other tips as an estate planning and probate attorney that you would give people, like the top three mistakes, if you will, that you see
sure.
people make and how to avoid them?
So number one mistake is either not doing it because you say, oh, it's too complex, or I don't have a lot of things, and so I don't need to have an estate plan. Or you did an estate plan back when your kids were infants and now they're graduating from college. This is not a static document. I recommend reviews every 3 to 5 years of your documents. You know, you can also do annual reviews. You want to make sure you review your documents anytime there's a major life change. You know, you get married, you have kids, you get divorced. So number one,
You
actually,
buy a house.
yeah, buying a house. Thank you. That's, exactly. But number one, having the plan and then reviewing the plan. Don't just put it away and say, whew, I'm done with that. I never have to look at it again. Number two, communicating. You don't have to tell people what's in your plan, but let them know, like, let your kids know, I do actually have a plan, or you are the people that I have nominated for these various positions. And if you want to give them a copy, you can, but you don't have to. But at least give them a heads up. If I walk outside and, drop dead for some reason, look for my estate plan because I have one. Okay, so communicating that. And I guess the third one, oh gosh, what's the third thing? Really, those are the big two. Yeah.
Beneficiaries on bank accounts.
Oh, okay. So here's the other thing. It's really important how things are titled. We have a lot of people who will have a trust designed and then not fund the trust by actually retitling assets to go into the trust. So if as part of your estate plan, you have a trust, that is fantastic. That is only step one. The next step is to fund the trust by retitling assets. So if we're talking about real estate, if you already have the real estate, you have your attorney prepare a new deed and record the new deed in the land records. If you have a trust in place and you go to settlement on a new purchase, you can say, hey, I have the trust. We don't want the house purchased just in our names individually. We want to sign at settlement as trustees of our trust because we want this property in our trust. Fantastic. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, making sure that bank accounts, real estate, things like that are titled properly, because what we sometimes see and what's very sad is someone will come and say, well, my dad had a trust. And then when you look to see how things are titled, there's nothing actually titled to the trust, or they didn't, the trust is a beneficiary on any documents. So what they end up having is a very expensive binder that does no good because they still have to go through the probate process.
I've seen that so many times. And I loved what you said about communication. I'm remarried, so I'm married for a second time. And I've always been pretty transparent with my children about my desires, my plans, not dollar amounts, but just concepts.
Yeah.
And I realized that we hadn't had that conversation with my stepchildren, who are all adults.
Mhm.
And so they're in town right now. They came in town for the holidays, and my husband and I had a conversation with them. And we both have long-term health insurance. So
Yeah.
we had the long-term health insurance woman that we purchased the policy from on a Zoom call with us so that she could explain to the kids how does it work. She could answer any questions that they may have had. They didn't know what long-term care was or what it entailed.
Right.
So we didn't get into dollar amounts or anything like that, but just concepts. We both would like to age in place at home. We don't have a desire to go into an adult living facility. Just different concepts so that they knew what our overall, and then we
Mhm.
typed it up and sent them a document and we gave them the names and phone numbers of our estate planning attorneys, a brokerage person and a long-term care person so that if I walk
Right.
outside and get hit by a bus today,
Yeah.
and they'll know where to go.
I love that. That is fantastic. And that's exactly, you can decide the level of detail that you want to go into with your plans. But yeah, definitely at the very least say, we do have plans. This is
Mhm.
what we're looking at. To your point, having a blended family, that adds another layer of complexity because what you don't want to have happen, and what I've actually seen happen sometimes, is children from one relationship are inadvertently disinherited because everything goes to the new partner and then goes to their kids. And it's like if we had just had this communication and it had come up, we could have planned for it to say, oh, wait a minute, we need to make sure that we have this document in place, that document in place. Or it could be, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. You have one person who's very successful and says, I don't need this. So but having that discussion, having a frank discussion, and it's not something along the lines of, I'm waiting for you to pass away so I can get my inheritance. No. It's more of a, just want to make sure that there is something in place, that you've thought about it, that if you have a plan, you let us know. If you don't have a plan, we can start looking at it. Even for the younger kids, I say anyone over the age of 18, you're an adult now. Congratulations. You also need to have a plan. And again, you might think, I don't have a lot, but as an adult, this is the perfect time for you to have your power of attorney document. If you're in an accident, they're not going to call your mother if,
I
unless you
had
give the
this, and
okay.
that's what I gave, when my children turned from adolescents into adults, I paid for that for them. So because that my God, kids go off to college, they get alcohol poisoning. As a mother, they're an adult now, so you're not just able
Yes.
to call and get information because of HIPAA.
Yes.
So it's not just in case of someone dying, and long-term care as well. If I needed a hip replacement, they'll come in and cover during that time and then cease benefits. So I just think it's important to share that information with our adult children or whoever the people are who are going to be responsible because it can
Absolutely.
be the nightmare when nobody knows anything. And
And
these things
even,
usually happen like that.
yeah, we're talking about adult children, but if you have children who are still minors, having that discussion. I know with my ex-husband and I, so when our children were younger, we both said, oh, okay, if something happens to both of us, who's going to take care of the kids? We're like, my mom. And he was saying his mom, I was saying my mom, and we had to have that discussion because we were both like, well, naturally, my mother is going to take care of them. But again, having that discussion to say, okay, well, this is why we might want this person versus that person. Or, if your parents are no longer here, your siblings, you might love your sister, but you might not want your sister raising your kids. So these are the sort of conversations, or you might want your sister raising your kids, but your sister is like, I have my hands full. I have two children that have special needs. I don't think, I mean, I love my nieces and nephews. I don't know that I'd be able to take them on full time. But those are the conversations that you have. And that way, you know, again, you can plan. And hopefully you don't need any of this, but in case you do, you've had these discussions, you have a better idea of who can handle what and who can assist, at any given time.
Thank you so much, Dominique. I'm going to stop recording so that we can just chat off the camera.
Okay.
And it's been a pleasure. Just a moment.